It feels like everyone's talking about how wild things are in the U.S. right now.
Yeah, Trump back in office,
Yeah.
Elon Musk whispering in his ear.
It's crazy.
You'd think the streets would be overflowing with protesters, but
Right.
it's been eerily quiet. What's going on?
It really is a puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, all the ingredients for mass protests seem to be there.
Oh, yeah.
Public outrage is boiling over.
Yeah.
But those massive, organized demonstrations
Yeah.
just aren't materializing.
No.
So today, we're going to unpack why that is.
Right.
We're diving into news articles, expert opinions,
Oh,
and even a peek at what the opposition is thinking.
I love that.
We've got a real stack of sources to sift through.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, first things first.
Mm.
There are protests happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's a fragmented landscape.
Okay.
Think of it as a kaleidoscope of smaller demonstrations scattered across the country. One source even describes dueling protests happening on the same day,
No way.
in the same place, but on opposite sides of the street.
Oh, wow.
This was in Huron County, Michigan.
Okay.
A powerful visual of the division we're facing.
Almost like they're protesting each other,
Yeah.
not just the policies.
Yeah.
Is that part of what's making it hard to build a united front?
It certainly contributes, yeah. And the speed at which things are changing plays a role, too.
Right.
Remember the initial budget cuts?
Oh, yeah.
$1 trillion slashed,
I do.
accidentally halting Ebola prevention funding, essential workers fired.
Wow.
The Trump administration, with Musk's influence, reversed some decisions under public pressure.
Uh-huh.
But that rapid-fire, inconsistent approach makes it incredibly difficult to organize any large-scale response.
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, legal challenges are also popping up.
Yeah.
Our sources mention a judge in California who blocked mass firings of federal workers. Could these legal wins, even if they're temporary, be making people less likely to hit the streets?
It's possible. Those legal victories offer a sense of relief, perhaps lessening the immediate urgency to protest for some.
I can see that.
So we've got fragmented protests,
Okay.
rapid policy changes, and legal interventions all playing a role
Okay.
in the absence of those massive demonstrations we might have expected.
Got it.
But let's shift gears for a moment and look at the opposition itself.
Okay.
Are they even on the same page about how to respond?
Because from what I've seen, there's a lot of debate within the Democratic Party right now. Some, like strategist James Carville, think they should basically lie low and wait for Trump's approval rating to tank.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, the rollover and play dead strategy.
Yeah.
The thinking is that they should wait for the right moment to strike, rather than risk energizing Trump's base with immediate opposition.
Okay.
But of course, others see this as a dangerous gamble, arguing that the damage being done is too great to just sit back and watch.
Right.
They're pushing for immediate, forceful action to counter the administration's agenda.
So there's like two very distinct camps here.
Exactly.
That's a tough call.
Yeah,
And all this internal debate doesn't exactly project a unified front.
right.
Does that play a part in this lack of a cohesive protest movement?
It certainly doesn't help. But to be fair, grassroots movements are emerging.
Oh.
Our sources point to groups like 5501, which has organized protests in all 50 states.
Wow, all 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
They might not be on the same scale as historical movements like the civil rights movement or the labor movements,
Yeah.
but they show that the desire for change is simmering.
So we're seeing sparks of resistance,
Yeah,
but not the full-blown inferno some might have predicted.
right.
Why does the left seem to struggle with building those kinds of large-scale, sustained movements compared to, say, the right?
Well, it's not about one side being better at organizing than the other.
Okay.
The left often faces a unique set of challenges.
Got it.
Think about the sheer diversity of viewpoints within the left,
Okay.
from centrist liberals to democratic socialists and anarchists.
Right. That's a pretty wide range.
Yeah, herding those cats and getting them to agree on a unified strategy is a tall order.
Okay, so herding cats.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Uh-huh.
And I imagine that takes time,
Yeah,
something they don't have a lot of with these rapid-fire policy changes.
exactly. Plus, the left often prioritizes inclusivity and making sure all voices are heard.
Yeah.
While admirable, this commitment to pluralism can sometimes slow down decision-making compared to a more top-down approach.
So it's a balancing act
It is.
between making sure everyone feels heard
Uh-huh.
and being able to act decisively.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, there's also a distrust of institutions,
Yeah.
even their own political party,
Yeah.
within segments of the left.
That's right.
Right.
That distrust.
Yeah.
born from a history of feeling unheard or misrepresented by traditional power structures,
Yeah.
can make it difficult to build the kind of sustained collaborative movements that have historically driven impactful change.
So a lot of internal factors at play.
Yeah.
But let's not forget that the left has achieved incredible wins for civil rights,
Oh, absolutely.
labor rights,
Yeah.
social justice throughout history.
Totally.
So the potential is there.
The potential is there.
Right.
The question is, can they harness that energy and translate it into sustained, unified action in the face of this new set of challenges?
Right, because it's a whole new ballgame now.
It is.
And that leads us to a big looming question.
Yeah.
Dismantling of federal agencies.
Well, right. It's like the elephant in the room.
It is.
Right.
They're tearing down these institutions, but what's the real goal here? What's the end game?
It's not a simple answer. Our sources suggest a mix of motivations. There's the states' rights argument, the belief that the federal government has overreached and power should be returned to states and local communities.
So shrinking the federal government,
Yeah,
giving more control to the states.
exactly.
Does that tie into the economic interests at play here?
I think so.
Because less regulation is often seen as a win for businesses,
Yeah.
even if it means fewer protections for workers or the environment.
You're spot on. That's a key part of the narrative.
Okay.
And then you have the general anti-bureaucracy sentiment.
Uh-huh.
The idea that the government is bloated, inefficient,
Right.
needs a good trimming.
Needs to be lean and mean.
Exactly.
Right.
That plays into a populist distrust of big government.
Go ahead.
Seeing these agencies as out of touch with the everyday needs of people.
So it's a potent cocktail of ideology,
Yeah.
economics,
Uh-huh.
and populism,
Yeah.
fueling this push to dismantle federal agency.
Right.
But what does that actually look like on the ground? I mean, what's the vision for America
Yeah.
after this dismantling is
Yeah.
done?
Well, that's where things get a little murky.
Okay.
There are a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
And the sources don't offer a clear blueprint for what this new America will look like.
Which makes it even harder for the opposition to formulate a response, right?
It does.
It's not just about opposing specific policies.
Right.
It's about grappling with this larger vision,
Totally.
this potential reshaping of the American landscape.
That's a key point, and it's something we'll continue to unpack
Right.
as we delve deeper into the sources. But before we do that,
Okay.
I want to touch on a recent event that might offer a glimpse into the tactics being employed
Okay.
to counter this agenda. The Buy Nothing protest on February 28th,
Ah, yes.
right?
Organized by the People's Union USA.
That's right.
The idea was to hit corporations where it hurts,
Yeah.
their wallets,
Uh-huh.
with a one-day nationwide boycott.
Exactly.
It felt like a direct response to rising prices
Yeah.
and corporate greed.
Yeah.
Did it work?
Well, early data suggests it didn't have a significant impact on spending.
Interesting.
Experts point out that one-day boycotts rarely cause lasting change.
Right.
It's tough to break those deeply ingrained consumer habits,
Right.
but I think it's important to look beyond the immediate economic impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because even if the Buy Nothing Day itself didn't cause a major disruption,
Uh-huh.
didn't it feel like a sign
Yes.
that people are looking for new ways to fight back,
Absolutely.
to leverage their collective power?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This protest might be a ripple in a much larger wave of economic resistance brewing.
I see. Okay.
Our sources point to more boycotts being planned
Okay.
and a growing awareness of the potential for consumers to use their wallets as a tool for social change.
So not a silver bullet,
Right?
but perhaps a sign of things to come.
Exactly.
Okay, we've talked about the fragmented protests, the opposition's dilemma,
Yeah.
the dismantling of agencies,
Okay.
and this stirring of economic resistance. But what does all of this mean for the average American? What are the real-world implications of this power shift and all this uncertainty?
That's the question we need to explore now. As we shift our focus to the individual experience,
Okay.
we'll see how these seemingly abstract political maneuvers can have a very tangible impact on everyday life.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Before we get into the everyday implications for Americans, though, I think it's important to zoom out and look at the global landscape.
Okay.
You mentioned those overtures to Russia, which have been causing a lot of anxiety internationally.
It's a big deal.
If America steps back from its global leadership role,
Mm-hmm.
what happens to the world order?
It's not just about America turning inward. It's about what happens in the vacuum
Yeah.
that might
Yeah.
create I mean, historically, when a superpower retreats,
Yeah.
it often creates opportunities for others to assert themselves.
All right.
sometimes aggressively.
Exactly. And the sources we're looking at suggest that a more isolationist America could embolden countries like Russia and China,
Okay.
allowing them to exert greater influence on the world stage.
So that's a concern.
Yeah, think about the impact on global trade,
Right.
economic policy, military alliances.
Yeah.
It's a domino effect that could reshape the entire geopolitical landscape.
So much is interconnected.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of experts have been talking about a shift towards a multipolar world
Yeah.
where power is distributed among several major players
Right.
rather than concentrated in one superpower.
Yeah.
Is that what we're heading towards?
It's definitely a possibility, and while a multipolar world might sound more balanced on the surface,
Okay.
it also comes with its own set of challenges.
Like what?
More competing interests,
Okay.
more potential for conflict, a greater need for diplomacy and cooperation.
Yeah.
It's a much more complex and potentially volatile scenario.
So more players doesn't necessarily mean more stability.
Right, exactly.
It makes you wonder if organizations like the United Nations will become even more important in that kind of world.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't they be the ones trying to mediate between these different power blocks and prevent things from spiraling out of control?
You'd think so, right? But some of our sources actually suggest that a multipolar world might weaken these international institutions.
Really? Why is that? I would have thought they'd be more vital than ever.
Well, the thing is,
Yeah.
a lot of these institutions rely on strong leadership from major powers,
Okay.
especially the United States.
Yeah.
If that leadership fades,
Right.
if America becomes less engaged in global affairs, these organizations might lose their teeth, their ability to enforce agreements
Okay.
or resolve disputes effectively.
So instead of a more cooperative world,
Yeah.
we could actually end up with a more chaotic one.
Right.
One where it's everyone for themselves
Yeah.
and might make, right.
Exactly.
That's exactly a comforting thought.
It's a sobering possibility, no doubt. But I don't want to paint an entirely pessimistic picture. A multipolar world also has the potential for new alliances and partnerships to emerge
Okay.
based on shared interests and regional cooperation.
Okay, so maybe new alliances form.
Right. We might see a shift away from a top-down, U.S.-centric world order
Yeah.
towards something more decentralized and adaptable.
So maybe a less predictable world, but potentially one that's more responsive
Yeah.
to the unique needs and challenges of different regions.
Exactly.
It's a double-edged sword, it seems.
It is.
Okay, enough about geopolitics for a moment.
Okay.
Let's bring it back to the average American.
Yeah.
How will these global shifts, this potential power vacuum,
Yeah.
impact everyday life here in the U.S.?
Right.
What are the tangible things people should be paying attention to?
It's important to remember that these global shifts aren't happening in a vacuum.
Right.
They're directly connected to the domestic changes we discussed earlier,
Okay.
the erosion of public trust,
Yeah.
the economic uncertainty,
Yeah.
the political polarization. All of these things are intertwined,
Okay.
and their effects will be felt across multiple aspects of American life.
I'm guessing the economy is at the top of that list.
Probably.
If the U.S. starts to disengage from global trade agreements
Yeah.
or reorients its economic priorities,
Yeah.
that could have a big impact on jobs.
Yeah.
Prices, the kinds of goods and services that are available.
Absolutely. Everyday consumer choices could be affected.
How so?
Some products might become more expensive or harder to find,
Okay.
while new markets and opportunities might emerge.
Okay, so it's hard to predict exactly what will happen.
Yeah, it's all very fluid and unpredictable at this point.
And I imagine national security will be a big concern as well.
Of course.
A less engaged America might mean a more unstable world,
Right.
which could lead to increased military spending,
Yeah,
a greater risk of being drawn into conflicts.
that's right. And the potential consequences could even hit closer to home
Oh,
with heightened concerns about terrorism and threats to homeland security. And then there's the question of individual rights and freedoms.
okay.
If the federal government shrinks, as some proponents of dismantling agencies advocate,
Yeah.
what happens to those protections we've come to rely on at the national level?
That's a point I think a lot of people are worried about.
Yeah.
Does power shifting to the states mean that our rights could become dependent on our zip code?
It's a legitimate concern. As power devolves to the state level, we could see a patchwork of laws and regulations across the country. What's protected in one state might not be in another,
Right.
leading to inconsistencies and disparities in areas like civil rights, environmental protection, and workers' rights.
So the America you live in,
Yeah.
The rights and freedoms you enjoy
Right.
might increasingly depend on where you happen to reside.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big shift from the idea of a unified nation with shared values
Right.
and protections for all citizens.
And that ties into another significant concern.
Okay, what's that?
Social cohesion,
Okay.
as these divides widen.
Both within the U.S. and on the global stage,
Yeah.
it becomes harder to find common ground,
Right.
to bridge the gaps between different perspectives and ideologies.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for fragmentation, not just politically, but socially and culturally as well.
So not only are we facing potential economic and security challenges, but also a potential fraying of the fabric of American society.
Yeah.
The sense of shared identity and purpose that has historically bound us together.
It's a lot to process, a lot to grapple with.
It is, but it's important to remember that even amidst all this uncertainty,
Yeah.
there's still room for agency,
Absolutely.
for individuals and communities to shape their own futures.
Yeah.
We've talked about the potential downsides, but we also need to acknowledge the opportunities that arise in times of change.
Right, because it's not all doom and gloom.
Right.
We talked earlier about the possibility of a more engaged citizenry,
Yeah.
people taking ownership of their local communities and creating positive change from the ground up.
That was inspiring. Yeah. And alongside that, there's always the potential for innovation and creativity.
Okay.
Throughout history, human beings have faced seemingly insurmountable challenges,
Oh, yeah.
and we've always found ways to adapt to solve problems, to create new solutions.
So maybe this period of upheaval, this shift in the global landscape,
Yeah.
could actually be a catalyst for positive transformation.
It's not a guarantee, of course.
Right.
But it's a possibility worth considering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen passively.
Right.
It requires awareness, engagement,
Uh-huh.
and a willingness to embrace change both on a personal level and as a society.
Exactly. So what can people do?
Yeah.
How can they navigate this uncertain terrain and contribute to a positive outcome?
Right. What are the concrete steps, the actions they can take
Yeah.
to shape a future that reflects their values and aspirations?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into the potential paths forward, the choices we face, and the actions we can take to build a future that's not just resilient, but also just equitable and hopeful.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
I'm excited for this part.
So far, we've really gone deep on this whole missing protests thing.
We have.
Turns out it's way more complex than just people being apathetic.
Yeah, way more.
We've got a fragmented opposition,
Right.
rapidly shifting policies,
Yeah.
this economic resistance brewing.
Uh-huh.
And it's just domestically.
Exactly.
And on the global stage, we're potentially seeing the beginning of a major power shift.
Yeah, we really are.
With America stepping back and other players like Russia and China ready to fill the void.
It's fascinating to watch.
It's a lot to take in. And honestly, some of it is pretty unsettling.
Right.
But we don't want to leave our listeners spiraling into existential dread.
Uh-huh. No.
We've talked about the problems,
Yes.
the challenges. Now let's get to the solutions.
Let's do it.
What can people actually do in the face of all this?
Right, because feeling powerless is a surefire way to guarantee nothing changes.
Yeah, I hate that feeling.
So where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start?
I think the sources we've looked at point to a few key strategies
Okay.
for navigating this uncertain landscape and creating a more positive future.
Okay, give us the action plan.
All right, haha.
Step 1.
Step 1 is simple, yet surprisingly difficult.
Awareness.
Awareness. Okay.
We've done some of the heavy lifting here.
Yeah, we tried.
Haha. By unpacking these complex issues.
Yeah.
But it's about staying curious, staying informed, and not letting yourself get bogged down by information overload.
So it's not just about reading headlines.
Right.
It's about going deeper.
Exactly.
Seeking out diverse perspectives.
Yes.
Maybe even challenging some of your own assumptions.
I love that.
Basically becoming a more informed and engaged citizen.
Precisely. Knowledge is power.
It really is.
Especially in a world awash in information.
Right. It can be overwhelming. Some accurate, some deliberately misleading.
That's the tricky part.
Once you have a solid understanding of what's going on,
Okay.
that's when you can move to step 2.
Okay, step 2.
Engagement.
Engagement. Okay, so this is where we go from knowing things to doing things.
Right.
But with so many potential issues to tackle, where do you even begin?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It can feel paralyzing. Like, what can I possibly do that will actually make a difference?
That's where it becomes personal.
Okay.
Ask yourself, What issues resonate most deeply with Ev?
Okay.
What are my values, and where do I see the greatest need for change?
Right. Get really specific.
Maybe you're passionate about climate change, social justice,
Yeah.
economic inequality.
Right. Maybe you're fired up about protecting public education.
Yeah.
Or ensuring access to health care.
Yeah.
Whatever lights your fire.
Exactly.
That's where you focus your energy.
Exactly. And remember, engagement takes many forms.
Okay.
It could be voting in local elections,
Okay.
volunteering your time, donating to organizations you believe in,
Oh.
even just having conversations with people in your community to raise awareness.
So it's not about everyone becoming a full-time activist.
No.
It's about finding ways to contribute
Yeah.
within your own sphere of influence,
Exactly.
making your voice heard
Yeah.
in whatever way feels authentic to you.
Now, here's the thing. Change rarely happens in a straight line.
Sadly.
There will be setbacks, frustrations,
Yeah.
moments when you feel like giving up.
Oh, all the time.
That's why the next step is crucial. Building resilience.
Ooh, resilience. It's a buzzword,
It is.
but it's so important, especially in times like these.
Yeah.
How do we cultivate that inner strength to keep going,
Yeah.
even when it feels like the world is falling apart around us?
It's about cultivating a strong support system.
Okay, good support system.
Surround yourself with people who share your values,
Okay.
who can offer encouragement and perspective when you hit those inevitable roadblocks.
Yeah, it's important to have those people.
Join groups. Connect with like-minded individuals online or in your community.
That's great advice.
Because trying to tackle these massive issues alone is a recipe for burnout.
It really is.
We need each other to stay motivated, to remind ourselves that we're not alone in this fight.
I love that.
Absolutely. And it's not just about external support.
Right.
It's also about self-care.
Okay, self-care, that's important.
Make time for the things that nourish you,
Uh-huh.
whether it's spending time in nature, practicing mindfulness, engaging in creative pursuits.
Right, fill your cup so you can pour from it.
Exactly.
Because you can't fight for a better world if you're running on empty.
I agree with that 100%.
Okay, we've talked about individual actions,
Yeah?
but a lot of our sources also emphasize the power of collective action.
Yes.
How does that fit into the equation?
It's crucial. While individual actions are important, they often have a greater impact when they're amplified through collective effort.
Okay.
We saw a glimpse of this with the Buy Nothing protest.
Right. Even if that specific boycott didn't single-handedly topple the corporate giants, it demonstrated the potential for consumers to flex their collective muscle.
Exactly. And the same principle applies to political action.
Okay, how so?
When people unite and demand change, whether through protests, organized campaigns, or simply by voting in large numbers,
Okay.
they can exert real pressure and influence policy decisions.
So it's about finding ways to connect with others who share your concerns, to build solidarity and create a force for change that's much greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. Now, here's a crucial point.
Okay.
As we work towards collective action, we need to be mindful of the potential pitfalls.
Okay, like what?
One of the biggest risks in this politically charged climate is the tendency toward polarization and fragmentation.
Right, that whole us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
It's easy to retreat into echo chambers.
Yeah.
Surround ourselves with people who already agree with us and demonize anyone who holds a different view.
Which doesn't get us anywhere.
No, not at all.
And that leads to a breakdown of communication, a lack of empathy, and an inability to find common ground.
Which is what we need most.
Exactly.
So how do we break out of those echo chambers and bridge those divides?
It's about being willing to engage in respectful dialogue with people who hold different views, to listen with an open mind and seek understanding, rather than just trying to win an argument.
Right, which can be hard.
It's about building bridges instead of walls.
I love that.
Easier said than done, I know.
It is.
But absolutely essential if we want to create a future
where
everyone feels heard and respected, where we can work together to solve problems.
So much of what we've talked about today boils down to that. Coming together, finding common ground, recognizing our shared humanity.
I think that's a good place to end it, actually.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind as they navigate this uncertain future?
One final thought.
Okay, hit us with it.
And it's a big one. Never underestimate the power of hope.
Hope, okay.
It's easy to get overwhelmed by the scale of the challenges we face.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
To feel like it's all just too much.
It can feel that way.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Hope is not about naive optimism.
Right.
It's not about pretending everything is fine.
No.
It's about recognizing that the future is not predetermined. We have the power to shape it.
I love that.
Through our choices,
Okay.
our actions,
Yeah.
our collective will.
It's about taking action.
It is.
And even small acts of courage, compassion, and defiance can create a ripple effect,
They can.
inspiring others and contributing to a more positive outcome.
Exactly.
It's like that old saying,
What's that?
it is better to light a candle than curse the darkness.
I love that saying.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with a sense of empowerment.
Yeah.
Don't get bogged down in despair.
Right.
Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep fighting for the future you want to see.
I like that.
The journey might be long and winding,
Yeah.
but it's a journey worth taking.
It really is.
And on that note,
Yeah.
we'll leave you to continue your own explorations.
Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.